Hello and welcome to the IT Lab, where we build and test IT solutions. Today we'll be setting up Azure Arc. In this lab we'll be managing on-premises servers for free using Azure Arc, and we'll onboard the Windows and Linux servers to Azure Arc using PowerShell, and then we'll manage them securely from the portal and using SSH. The primary focus of this lab is for non-domain joined servers, and also an environment where there might not be a standard deployment solution like SCCM or Group Policy or Ansible. The best part of this solution is that there's no cost for simply adding the servers into Azure Arc and accessing them remotely. In order to onboard 6 servers, we'll use something called PowerShell remoting, which means we can send many PowerShell commands to several servers at the same time. In terms of the lab environment, we do need an Azure account and we do need to set up a payment method. We have 3 Linux servers, all with PowerShell 7 and SSH configured. We have 2 Windows servers with the desktop experience, and we have 1 Windows core server. We also have the last Windows 10 workstation PC, and I've pre-installed PowerShell 7 and the Azure CLI. The first thing we'll do is we'll set up the resources in Azure. Firstly, I've set up a subscription with that name. And next I need to set up some resource providers. These resource providers are able to run commands using APIs. If we take a look, the resource providers are now all registered. Next, we need to set up a service principal. The reason why we're setting this up is for security. So rather than the onboarding script running as a user, we're going to run it as a service principal. This is the name I've given it. You can call it whatever you want. And we'll register the service principal, and we can see it there. We also need to set up a secret, which is a secure way of the onboarding script connecting with Azure. We'll give that a name, and I'm going to set a short period for it to expire here, only a few days, so that again we have security that if someone tries to use the script after those few days, it won't work. And I'll copy the secret. Next, we need a resource group. And I'll pick the subscription for Azure Arc. I'll give this a resource name, and I'll make sure that the region is the UK region I'm in. This resource group will have all the resources related to Azure Arc. Next, I need to give that service principal access to this resource group. So the role I need to give in order for onboarding to take place is this role here. So it's the Azure Connected Machine Onboarding. And I'll select the service principal that we just created. And then I'll assign it. The next step is to onboard the Windows servers. Now, since this is a server that isn't connected to a domain, we need to do some work to make sure that the Windows 10 PC is able to connect to the internal servers using PowerShell. So what we'll do is we'll use the WinRM service. First things first is within PowerShell, we start the service, and this is on the Windows 10 admin PC. Once the service is started, we'll also set an item that will allow all trusted hosts to connect to remote servers. And to test whether that works, I'm going to run the invoke command in PowerShell and see if I can remotely just connect to one of the remote machines, the Win Server 01 machine, and I'm just going to send it a simple command of hostname to see whether it successfully connects and comes back with a value. Next, let's go into Azure and let's download the script that we can generate to onboard the Windows servers. We're going to pick multiple servers here because we want to push this script out to multiple servers. What this script will do is it will install the connected agent that's required for Azure Arc to talk to the on-premises servers. I'm going to add the resource group, the subscription that we've created, and also make sure that it's in the right region. I'm going to leave the operating system to Windows. We don't have any SQL servers, and I'm going to leave it to public endpoint, which means it's over the internet. And then I'm going to pick the service principal that we created earlier. I don't need any tags there. I can download the script, which is shown there, and it's a PowerShell script. There it is, so that it's downloaded for me to use. And if we take a look, we need to add the secret for the service principal in this area here. So I'm going to add that in. Once the secret's been added, the next thing to do is to use PowerShell to push out the script to the 3 Windows servers that we want to set up. I've created this text file with the list of servers so that the PowerShell invoke command can iterate through that list of servers. Computer name is going to be the list of servers in that text file, so I'll use get content for that, and I'll name the file there. And then I'm going to use file path and use that script there. Once I run it, what it's doing is in parallel it's going to each server and it's running that script on the server as if I'm on the server directly. And you can see that there's percentages showing up there because what it's done is very quickly installed the script on the 3 servers. And if I look in machines in Azure Arc, we can see clearly that those 3 machines are now connected. Next, let's look at the Linux servers. There's a bit of preparation that we need to do in order to use something called PowerShell remoting over SSH. The reason why we're doing this is because PowerShell doesn't natively support some of the things that we need to do on the Linux servers. The first thing to do is to generate the keys so that the private and public keys can be used to connect to the remote servers. You have a private key on the connecting workstation and you have a public key that you send to the servers that you're connecting to. That way it will trust it. So we've created both the private and the public key, and now what we'll do is we'll send the public key to the remote servers. If you're wondering what's going on with this long command, especially if you're not familiar with Linux, what we're doing is we're echoing out the public key, which is that one there, and then we're remotely connecting using SSH to the first server, which is linserv01, and then we're again echoing out the contents of that public key to that area, which is where the Linux server is expecting that public key to be located. We'll need the password to connect to that server. I'll do the same for the other 2 servers. So it's linserv02 and 03. Now the public keys are there. I'm just going to do a test, and as you can see, I was able to SSH into linserv01 without a password. This is the reason why we're doing this first. So next, I want to just check 02 and I can connect, and 03. So this makes it a lot easier to do admin work on remote Linux servers when you don't have to keep on putting the passwords in. And the reason why we need it in this case is because we're going to be running a script, and we don't want the script to be prompting us for a password every 2 seconds. So let's go into machines within Azure Arc, and we're going to now generate a bash script for Linux to onboard the servers. And this time we'll choose Linux, and it will create that bash script for us. And again, we have no SQL servers over the public internet, and we'll use the same service principal we used previously. No tags required, and we're going to use basic script here because we haven't got Ansible in our environment. We download the file, and if we look, we can see it's a SH file. And I also have a text file with the Linux servers listed there, because again, we're going to iterate through those 3 Linux servers to onboard the script. Now, what I've done here is I've created a script, which is a wrapper script over the one we just downloaded. The reason being is because of the limitations of PowerShell. If I go through this quickly, I've just got some variables, which is the user account on the remote servers, a password, which I've just starred out there, but it is a valid password that I'll be putting in afterwards. I've got the location or the name of the list of servers in a text file, and then I've got the onboarding script that I've just downloaded from the Azure portal. First of all, what I'll do is I'll get the content from that host file, the list of servers in the text file, and I'll put it in the variable host names, and then I'll loop through those host names. And firstly, I'll use PowerShell to create a remote session to each server in turn. I'll copy the script over to the remote server. I'll then use the invoke command to change the permissions on that script I've just copied over, and then I'll SSH into that server, pass it the password for sudo, and then it will run the onboarding script that we downloaded from Azure. Finally, for security, I'll do another invoke command and remove the script from the remote servers so they can't be used by someone else. And then I'll finally just destroy the session that I've created in the PowerShell remoting over SSH. All I need to do now is run that script, and it will go through that loop that we created in the script and run the onboarding script. So you can see that it's finally finished. I have sped it up just for this video. And if I now go into Azure Arc and I go into machines, you'll see that those 3 servers are now connected as well. Now you have all 6 servers onboarded in Azure Arc. You're probably wondering, what's the benefit of that? Well, one thing is that they're now resources in Azure, so you can manage them just like any other resources within Azure. The next thing to do is to add Windows Admin Center to manage those Windows servers. This is a fairly simple process. First of all, I need to give the role to the resource group. And that's the role there, Windows Admin Center Administrator Login. And I'm going to give a group there that I've created already to have access. So anybody in this group will be able to remotely access those servers using Windows Admin Center. Now I've given the role, I can go into one of those servers and I need to set up Windows Admin Center, which I'll install there. It's actually installing an extension, as you can see there. And once it's all set up, this does take a few minutes, 5-10 minutes. But once it's installed, I can connect to that server as if I'm in the same room or in the same on-premises environment. But actually, what we're doing is connecting using the Azure portal, and this is a secure connection. I can also remote desktop into that server. So if you're wondering what the benefit of this is, it means you don't need to set up any VPN connections. You can have a member of staff, even on their own personal computer, logging into the portal in a browser and being able to provide support to your servers. Lastly, how would we manage the Linux servers using the Azure portal, or using that connection rather than have the servers internet facing? We use the Azure CLI. If you're not familiar with the CLI, it's a command line tool that you need to install on your Windows computer. First thing we want to do is log in to the tenant. So I'm going to specify what my tenant is here using the tenant ID, and I'm prompted in the standard way for Microsoft login. Once I'm logged in, I can go into the Azure portal and I can look at the commands that I need to run in order to connect using SSH. So I've put in password there, and what that does is add this local username here. So if I copy that and I paste it into my terminal where I just connected using the Azure CLI, I'm going to rename that to the lab admin user that I have on the remote servers. For the first run, it will install the SSH extension for me automatically, and if I say yes, it will go off, find it, install it, download it, and install it for me. Once I'm in, it will then connect using port 22, which I'm going to say yes, I'm happy to do that. And once the configuration has finished, I'm now in the server as if I was in the office connecting to it over a standard SSH connection. This is very powerful because it means you don't need staff sitting in the office all the time. They can connect remotely, and the user experience is exactly like sitting in the office. And in conclusion, let's take a look at some of the things I learned during this lab. I've found that Azure Arc is a viable option if you are a small business, because you can try it for free and you can carry on using it for free to maintain and connect to your servers remotely. There are other services that you might want to use afterwards once you've got an idea of how it works. So it's a good introduction to the cloud if that's something that your company isn't too familiar with, and it's a gentle way to get into the Azure cloud, get your IT staff learning about it, using it, and then deciding whether it's right for your company. This way of using Azure Arc is a zero capital and zero operating cost solution, so it's a bit of a no-brainer if you want to try it out. It does allow your staff to work remotely and flexibly. So that was a quick rundown of how you can onboard and manage on-premises servers without costing a penny. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe on YouTube, give me a like, send me your comments.